Welcome back to Let the Journey Begin with your host, Hilary Roberts, and my co-host, Jason Waller.
Yeah, that's next level, Hilary. You must have had some of that stuffing last week.
I sure did.
Yeah?
And I've had some espresso.
Yeah,
today.
I like that. Nice. 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 You didn't even change since last week. You just been staying in the same clothes, huh?
That's what I do.
Yeah.
They're stretchy.
Get it? Yeah. Hey, get it going.
Oh, and
man.
you have no idea. I
Yeah.
had my first golf lesson last Friday.
You did?
I did.
How'd that go?
You know, I think for the record, I'm going to be scoring the highest above par than any other person on the golf course.
At least you're out there. At least you're doing it, though. But it's that's some of the gifts of sobriety, though, right? Is we get to try and do different things that we've never done before.
That's right.
The beauty of it.
That's right.
I like that. Good for you.
Yeah, bro. I'm
Good
so
for you.
excited.
No, that's fun. That's fun. But you had a good Thanksgiving. Everything went well.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful Thanksgiving, and I loved having you guys over on Saturday with all of our friends.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun.
No, it's good. I'm happy that you're down here and that we're able to spend more time together and that we're connecting and, excited you guys for those of you that don't know, the foundation is getting our first official office. So we'll actually have like a little headquarters and that will be done in, I think, about a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And tell me this, isn't there a big thing coming out with your wife about our Go Girl stuff and all that?
yes, we have that's actually a very good point. We have a big announcement coming up where we've did a partnership with Go Girl, which is an energy drink. They've been around for, I think, like 18 to 20 years, I want to say. Maybe I'm off. You have to check that, Ryan. Maybe it's like 15 years, but they've been around for a while. And they are actually going to donate 50% of all their proceeds to our foundation. So we have a big announcement coming out about that, and just very stoked to be able to impact and empower women specifically in that space that have struggled with trauma and or mental health. And we're raising awareness and doing a huge campaign around it. So very stoked about that, but we'll get into that more when we have more details. But I'm looking forward to meeting the other half of our guests from last week. It sounds like we got Chris here, right? You want to bring him on?
Today, we are pleased to have the guy that married up, in his own words, ladies and gentlemen, with Chris Benton, co-host of the Chris and Sandy Show, if I can even speak today.
What's up, Chris?
Hey, Chris.
That's doing great.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's definitely my pleasure. Being on a show with a co-host, sometimes you forget that you're not a we.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I might sometimes say we or our.
No, you're all good, man. You're all good. I get it. Is this your first time actually being interviewed on the other side, or have you done this before?
I haven't done, per se, an interview. I've spoke a few times, told my story from a stage before.
Okay.
But I've never been interviewed in this format. It's just, we've always been on the other side like y'all.
Now, today, just like your wife did a beautiful job. And today, we're so glad that you're going to share your experience to help those that are hurting. And I think that's absolutely fabulous.
Yeah. With that being said, Chris, we're going to start off with the biggie. What did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, what's funny is, I really don't know. My dad was working all the time, so I don't even know if he knows what I wanted to be. My mom's passed away, so she's never really told me. But what I can tell you is I was the shiest person you would ever meet.
Wow. Elaborate on that
When
more.
when I was in high school, I remember they had oral book reports. And if I was called on to stand up and give a small little thing, nope, I'll take an F.
Wow.
What do you think that stemmed from?
Well, I was molested when I was young. And then so many little things in my life that led up to that point, and which eventually led to the whole alcoholism and all that.
Please tell us more about that. Like what happened and what drove you off course. And we're so honored. I always love it when, women are able to talk about those kinds of things, and men, it's becoming more open with men, but I absolutely love it when men are able to discuss these things. So how old were you? Can you tell us some of it?
I remember I was 13, 14, somewhere in there when I was first touched in an inappropriate way. But then, after, one thing I've learned through my life is if you've got a dream inside of you and you're pursuing it, a lot of times that dream will keep you away from the drugs and alcohol. But as soon as you lose that dream, then that's when the mask comes off and you end up going that way. So that's what happened with me is, issues happened. And then I found freestyle bicycle stuff. And I was really, I got trophies from it.
Wow.
I could do the ramp stuff. I could stand on the handlebars while you're riding down the road. And I got pretty good at it. I was, I found it at about 14 years old. And I remember about 16, 17, my whole goal at that point in my life, my dream was to go professional. I really thought I had a chance. And to this day, I know now that I did have a chance. But back then, I was 17 years old on a bicycle, and I had a lot of friends that, oh, you still on that bicycle thing? That's for kids and this and that, and everybody kept mocking me. And I was always a follower, not really a leader. And I kept hearing it over and over and over. And what I didn't realize back then, if you looked at all, now granted, as we've grown through the years, it's the age has dropped. But back then, the average pro biker was 21 years old.
Wow.
So I still had 4 more years before I got, so I was not old on a bike for that. But I listened to them and I gave up that dream. And then that was when I gave up my soul almost.
I love how you talk about that being a mask, though, and it taken away from having you to. It's the distraction, right, of you having to actually look at some of the stuff that had happened. So it's crazy because I was going to ask you what is some of the things that you love doing when you're younger, and to try to help you identify what is that you wanted to be when you grew up, but you just kind of were able to unwind and be able to show that you wanted to be a professional BMXer or professional biker, right? What were some of the things you loved doing when you were like a little kid? Did you play sports at all? Did you skateboard? Were bikes obviously weren't the thing yet?
I really don't have a lot of memories before age 13.
Wow.
Okay.
When you go through 19 years of addictions and all that, and the memories I do have, I got a few memories of some good points, some bad points, but memories as in like really enjoying life. I really don't remember a lot before 13, 14 years old. And I think a lot of it has to do with the alcoholism.
Well, but let me say this too. Sometimes, and I'm not going to dispute what you're saying on that because it can fry, it does fry our brains. But also, when we have a traumatic event occur, that can block out certain things. And around that same age that happened to you, and just from the experience of the therapy I've been through and the people I've talked with, that's huge. Now, was it a man or a woman that did those things to you?
It was a man, which made it worse because, of course, I was 14. So I always thought, oh, I could have stopped that because, so that it was like a cycle. So then it was like I could stop that. So, I always had that guilt, that shame from that. And I have reconciled, this person has passed away. Yeah. And all that. And before he passed away, I told him I forgive him completely. I had to heal from that.
Wow.
And I knew that. And, and so he knew before he passed away that he was forgiven and all that. And that helped me. But again, even at that time, I was still, I think it was after I was sober that I did that. I'm almost sure that it was after the soberness.
Wow.
So you your early stages in life, you don't have too much memory of. You go through the traumatic event, and then you find this passion and love that you have for bicycles and wanting to pursue that. Later down the road, the mask, like you said, comes off, and now you start to engage into substances. What transformed there when you stopped biking?
Well, I remember a friend of mine. We went to Tybee Island. And I've never had a drink before in my life. I was 17 years old. And I remember that night we drove out there, and I don't know how much I drank. I just know that they gave me screwdrivers, multiple.
You still love those.
And never had that. I end up passing out in the bathroom of the arcade we were in. They had to actually break the door down to get in because I had the door locked and I'm going by the stories that they tell me because I don't remember none of that.
Right.
And that they had to break the door down and they got me out. And here's the craziest part was my friends put me in the back of my bed of my truck and then they went back and partied more. So I'm laid out, passed out, 17 years old in the back of pickup truck. Not even knowing where I'm at. Drunk as can be. And I remember waking up the next morning, I'll never do that again. And then in the following weekend, there I was.
Yes.
Yeah. All
We
too familiar.
understand that.
We get that, man. So where did this addiction ultimately take you? I mean, so that was your first experience with it. And I mean, again, as you know, we understand, how that alleviation, when you're having that drink, how it can take away a lot of the pains, the insecurities, the shame, that we're dealing with, right? Because at that time, that's our solution, and it's helping us cope with what we think it's helping us cope with what we're going through,
and it's not.
Of course, no. It's actually we got to deal with the underlying issues. But so where did this end up taking you? I mean, after that experience,
The question really is, where did it not take me?
Okay, fair enough. Elaborate.
Because it's like as I started growing in alcohol year after year. They always say that your 21st birthday is usually the most party you'll do. My 22nd birthday was worse because, again, it was starting to get worse and worse. From age 17 to 21 or so, my home away from home was jail. I spent 90 days in boot camp. And what really stopped the criminal side of me was I remember getting in a courtroom and the judge was wanting to give me more leniency. And he looked at my rap sheet. He's like, I tell you what, I'm going to be lenient this one time. He said, but if I ever see you in my courtroom, I don't care if it's a speeding ticket, you're going to prison.
Wow.
And from the criminal side, that woke me up. But I spent 90 days in a boot camp. I went, ended up with 250, 300 hours of community service. I've been in and out of jail 5-10 times through those 4 years. End up with a DUI. I remember the incident with the DUI. I was by myself, getting drunk, driving, and I remember my mom hires an attorney. It was the court date was next morning, so we get an attorney. So we get in the courtroom, and I remember the judge asked the officer, okay, what happened? And I told the attorney I got pulled over and I got locked up. I didn't know there was a story in between that. So here it is. I'm sitting there in a courtroom and the officer says, well, to be honest with you, I'm sitting in the mall parking lot and I'm watching cars go by and this car takes off squealing wheels. So I knew probably drunk, whatever, because he's doing this right in front of a cop car.
Right.
So I take off after him. He gets on 204. And by the time I get on 204, I no longer see taillights. So he was probably going over 100 miles an hour. And I finally get, he said that I got over the viaduct because I figured I'd go to the viaduct, and if I don't see him, then I'll turn around because there's nothing else they could do. I was gone. And when he went over the viaduct, my car was crashed into the wall sideways. And he said that when I pulled up to the car, Chris was fine. I got him out. I handcuffed him and all that. And so I'm just sitting there like in the courtroom. My attorney looks at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know, because again, I didn't know all this happened.
Yeah.
So here it is. I get, the judge looked at my attorney and says, you want me to let this guy out? Are you kidding me? 30 days. Bam. And it was right around Christmas time. So the judge goes to my mom. Not the judge, but attorney goes to my mom and rips the check. Says, he could have got this without me. So I feel guilty taking your money. So he ripped the check. He says, but I'm going to still try to get him out by Christmas. So here it is. It's like close to Christmas and he does whatever he does. And since and all my life, I could tell God was always with me, because all my life I've been with some that has always happened where people's wanted to help. I don't know why, but it's always been that way. And so he got me out on December 24th of that year.
Wow.
And it was just a crazy moment that I'll never forget. But did it stop me from drinking? No.
Yeah.
Well, you bring up something I was curious about. You just talked about your mother, bringing a check. Where were your parents during this time?
My dad always works at night. He was a truck driver, so he's on the road at night, home in daytime. And my mom was always home. So, I mean, I grew up in a middle-class family.
Right.
I wasn't one of them that didn't have a parent. Both my parents were married and all that. I had both parents. I was just one of them that had low self-image, followed the leader, and then once the alcoholism started taking over, I mean, it got so bad. One of my worst points I remember was, I did this on a bet. A friend of mine was hooked on crack, and I used to put him down because now I'm hooked on drinking, but I'm putting him down and saying, "Well, why don't you give that?" And he says, "I tell you what, if you will do crack with me for one night, however much I say, we do half and half, whatever." He says, "I'll spend the money," and he says, if you can not do that drug again for 6 months, I'll give you $500. Well, stupid me says, let's go for it.
Oh, God.
And so we did $500 to $1,000 in one night that he paid for. And I'm not going to lie, that was something that I could have easily got addicted to. So that was kind of easier for me not to ever go back. And I didn't touch it ever again. And I remember 6 months from that point, believe it or not, as druggy as this person was, he gave me that $500.
Wow.
Because everybody always told me, how could you trust someone who's a druggie? I was like, it's just one of the moments to where, again, when you're in the middle of addictions yourself, you trust things you shouldn't have. I mean, I've ended up in cars I shouldn't be. I've ended up in parking lots where I wake up next morning, I don't know where I'm at, and so much of that through 19 years of addictions. And as you know, with my spouse, Sandy, when we met, the first 5 years of our marriage was really hell on her because of the addictions. But boy, like you said, she was my angel.
Yeah. So on that point, so you did all these things, and you were this crazy alcoholic that also, did some stuff with drugs. But what was that moment of clarity? I mean, you were married 5 years. And so what happened at that time?
I remember, here it is. I'm in the middle of this marriage. She's never put me down, never nagged me, none of that. In fact, when I tell our story, people always kind of say, "Oh, she let you walk over her." And what they don't understand is she allowed me to experience God's pure love through her. So here it is. Wow. It was December 26, 2007. And I remember waking up. Now, I destroyed my first marriage because of this addiction. Yeah. So I'm in a second marriage, been given a second chance from God, and I'm destroying this. And I remember waking up December 26th, convicted, because I first time I ever been drunk on a Christmas day. Never in my life have I went there. And I pleaded with God, and I say, look, I was at the point to where either you take the desire from me, because I didn't ask for him to take the addictions away. I wanted either you take the desire away or I'm taking my life. We're not going any further.
Yeah.
And I was at the point where I was ready to give up my life because I knew Sandy deserved more. I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And I remember I felt this crazy nudge of God saying, give me 30 days. Now I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm just waking up from this crazy drinking. No, God, because my first thought was, you're God, why you need 30 days? My second thought was, okay, something's playing tricks on me. Why do I feel like this? But what I didn't know then that I know now is when you read the Bible, every miracle was always proceeded with some form of obedience. Everyone. My obedience was going 30 days without touching it. And he would heal me. That was my thought. And I wanted to, and I remember telling Sandy, that's it, no more. I'm healed. God told me. And Sandy was like, still, like always, my little cheerleader. She was like, yay, we can do this. But she told me later in the back of her mind, she was like, you're right. Because she's heard it.
I knew that was coming.
But here it was. I remember going through that first week was kind of bad, but not, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But first couple weeks was rough.
Mm-hmm.
I get to about the 28th day or so, and somewhere in there, I've never had the desire to drink again.
Wow.
And that's been almost, in fact, this December 26th will be 14 years. And I've never had desire since.
Wow.
I've had people who believe different than I do that get upset with me when I tell the story. Because, they're like, well, God's not going to heal everybody the way he healed me. So you should not even tell your story because you're giving false hope. And I'm like, I'm giving the hope of God. That's what matters.
But you know what? Just like our show, we show there's every kind of way to recover. And certain people have shame like that. For me, I had cravings my first year and a half, and that's okay. I know people that put down the drink, never had an issue again from the day that it was removed that day. That's great. I know people that didn't relapse after they gave it up. That was not me. But, everybody has their story. And I love that you don't stand in shame around that. Just like, we have a lot of people that go to treatment, that do all these things. You and your wife, through your faith, came to these places. And there's nothing to be ashamed about with that at all.
And we've always had, that's been one thing about us since we married, is we've always had some type of extraordinary faith. Like I remember when we first started our church in 2010, they gave us a test of our gifts. And both of ours came up with the gift of faith as number one.
Wow.
I was like, okay, I can see that. And just to show you about the faith, I remember February 2nd of 2002, Cindy and I met online back when it was taboo. I always joke taboo in 2002. And, but it was taboo back then. And we talked on the phone for the first time, February 4th. We set a wedding date, February 18th, and we met in person March 4th. So we were meeting in person March 4th to see who God brought it. Because we both believed with everything in our heart that this was meant for God. From God. This was from God. And I owe that belief to Sandy sticking to me. Because if we didn't build that belief, faith in God, that God brought our marriage together for a purpose, then I don't think she'd have made it those years.
Well, let me tell you something that blows my mind. And because people that are sickies like I have been in my life, and I'm not a sickie today, but I still am works in progress, I'll say. But a lot of us do things just crazy ways, and we have to, go through crazy, tumultuous relationships. That kind of faith inspires me to where I'm just trying to hold back the tears right now, because even with 24 years sober, sometimes I doubt with everything that I believe God has brought me through. And I just, what a beautiful thing to glean from with you. Because I think I've come really far, and I know I have. But sometimes, even through all the things, I have difficulty sometimes, and it just make me so choked up with how you guys were in line with that. That's just fantastic.
No, it's beautiful to see. And to Hilary's point, it's like, look, there's to each his own. Everybody gets sober and can achieve sobriety in different facets. How part of your story is similar to my story, you know what I mean? To some degree.
Oh, wow.
There's little elements of it that play in. There's some people we have on here that have such a different story, but it's like, that's the beauty of it, is everybody is different. And that's why we do this show, is there's so many different walks of life. The disease of addiction, alcoholism is very multifaceted. And it's so important that everybody hears from everybody, because again, is the way, just how I got sober may not relate to a lot of people. Same thing with Hilary, same thing with you. But maybe it does. We don't know that until we become open and vulnerable and we share. We don't have that connection. And again, as I can tell you, just again, as by your wife sharing and you're sharing, like I've gotten a lot out of it. So regardless, I mean, this has already done its work and its message. Obviously it's done something for Hilary, and it's going to touch more people. So I want to, and it's beautiful to hear this. So how do you maintain or sustain your sobriety now? I mean, it's been 14 years, God willing, on the 24th or the 26th.
It's just not a desire. I mean, it's not one of them things where, we go, we visited Nashville 4 times this year, and we still went in the bars and all of that. It just doesn't, when God said he healed me, he healed me. I have zero to, and, I've never thought about it in almost 4. Now, granted, if I ever think about it, all I got to do is remember.
Right.
Sandy and I have talked about this. If I ever get there, she's always said, be open with me so we can talk about that. And because then if we can bring back those memories, and that's probably what's holding me down is I remember where I was. And, I think that's what gives our marriage such meaning and such strength and such spirit and such faith is, and we don't take each other for granted because we've been at the bottom. Mm. We know what it's like to be at the very bottom, to almost destroy the marriage, to then come out of that. How can I take things for granted in a marriage where I almost destroyed it? And I got a third chance, so to speak. Like, again, even though the marriage was second chance, but I kind of got a third chance in the middle of the marriage.
No, I love that. And again, I only know this information because of your wife. But, what about because I understand there was, a pill addiction as well. Is that something was that all accompanied within this alleviation?
That was actually, to be honest with you, that was quit by the time I got more heavy back in alcohol. The pill addiction was about a year or 2 of my life. I was hooked on the ephedrine pills.
Right.
I pop them tons. And then all of a sudden, it went from like 99 cents for a few to $10 to a few.
Right.
Well, at that point, I'm always broke. So from that point, I couldn't afford them anyway. So I went back to what I know best, and that's 99-cent malt liquor.
Right. So basically, you substituted your addiction for yeah. You got it.
And then it built from there.
But I want to ask you something for our listeners, and you've given us a lot of miracles, a lot of amazing things that have happened in your life and these spiritual experiences. If you were to give one action for the day for our listeners, what would it be?
I would say the action that Sandy and I did the most, and this would be, again, because I gear everything I talk about towards marriages. And again, you can kind of apply it to single life too. But the moment that really started changing is we started listening to a ton to marriage sermons, marriage conferences, reading marriage books. We soaked into the marriage industry so much that we've probably invested 10,000 hours at this point into marriage study through all that. Wow. Mm-hmm. And I believe that was the turning point that changed everything. Because that led me to, like I told you on our show, where a couple months into starting this new journey, that I sat Sandy down. I said, "Okay, Sandy, I know I'm healing. I don't think you are, but I know what can do it. The first 5 years of our marriage was hectic on you. I get that. I want you to know I get that." So I sat her on the bed and said, "Now tell me, everything that I've ever put you through in those early years, how you felt, everything, and I will zip it." And she really said, she was like, "Are you sure you want to know?" I was like, "Yes." And I remember about 40 minutes in, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh boy, what have I done? But at the same time, I also knew in the back of my head that if I didn't give her this chance to kind of get it out with me, that she was not going to heal at the pace I was healing. And when you don't heal together in a marriage, you will probably end up divorced.
Mm-hmm. No, great advice. Great. And there's a lot of people out there that are struggling, especially in their marriage. And I love that. It's funny because there's a lot of similarities to my story to yours with the marriage particularly. But so again, if people want to find out more about you or find about your show, where can people find you?
You can Google the Chris and Sandy Show. You can, we're on all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube, Facebook, The Chris and Sandy Show, or you can just go at Chris Sandy Show, chrissandyshow.com is, and all that. Because again, with the show, and I know she told part of the story, but again, that was another faith thing that we never imagined.
It's so amazing.
Chris, thank you so much for your time and your being so open and transparent, and just really enjoyed having you here. And you definitely brightened up my day for sure, man. I'm just grateful that you were here.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing I want to do in our life is, I've been through a lot. I've had a lot of pain. I went through a lot of struggles. And one thing I've learned is God never allows your pain to go without a purpose. He will use that pain for a purpose.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people are in the middle of that pain and they're like, oh God, it's like when I got healed from the thing, and I felt like God said he was going to help me with the help marriages. I laughed because I was like, my marriage is in a ditch. I couldn't see helping marriages at that point. But now I see that when we tell our story, it's not just helping people, but it's also helping marriages.
That's right. That's right.
Beautiful, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.